I am Max.
And I am Jailene.
And we are here to talk about the crown of thorns starfish and the effect that it's having on the Great Barrier Reef. Now, the Great Barrier Reef is located off of Queensland, Australia. It is the largest reef system in the world. It's over 1,400 miles long and many hundreds thousands of miles in square miles. It's in a tropical area. It's very hot in the summer and warm in the winter, and it rains pretty consistently throughout the year. And the reef itself is located on the benthic zone of the ocean, so that's the ocean floor. Now, the crown of thorns starfish is very large. It can grow to over a foot, and it has multiple arms. It has a ton of arms. When they're adults, they actually have very large toxic spines, which you can see in the picture. And those spines actually cause it to have very few predators when they're fully grown. The adult crown of thorns starfish feed on the coral because they have special enzymes in their stomach that actually liquefies it when they spread their stomach out over the coral. And when they're done eating, you can actually see visible white scars on the coral. When they're small, when they're larvae, they feed on algae. And they're found all throughout the Indo-Pacific region, which is a very huge region of the ocean. We find them all the way up as far as Japan. We find them in East Africa, and we even find them throughout some reefs in the Caribbean. Now, the major problem with the crown of thorns starfish is that they have huge population outbreaks. The first of which occurred in 1962 in Greenland, in Green Island, which is an island in the central part of the Great Barrier Reef. It's slightly north, and it's in an area referred to as the wet tropics. They occur about every 17 years, and we're not really sure of what the cause is. There are very many different causes that causes these huge population booms. One of the predictions is that terrestrial runoff is causing these outbreaks, and what that is agricultural runoff will go into the Great Barrier Reef and cause huge amounts of phytoplankton to accumulate, which is like algae. And that's actually what small crown of thorns starfish, the larvae, what they eat. So they have a huge amount of food source. So more small crown of thorns starfish can actually survive. Another factor that might cause these outbreaks is that we're actually removing a lot of the natural predators of crown of thorns starfish. One of which being the Triton snail, which is totally immune to the toxic spines of the adult crown of thorns starfish, and we're actually removing them because we use their shells as decorations, and we poach them for their beautiful shells. Also, raising water temperature could be the cause for these outbreaks because fertility for the crown of thorns starfish is actually better at warmer waters. Through our research, we found that the optimal temperature was 28 degrees Celsius. And right now it's around 24 to 26, but it's slowly rising to that 28 degrees. And these outbreaks are actually considered the largest contributor to coral reef decline.
So the Great Barrier Reef is also essential to ecosystem services, not only for marine life, but essentially human life. So first and foremost, they provide us with a natural seawall that protects the coast. And that is essential after storms when there could be floodings that could damage property. It also provides vast habitat for the marine life that resides there. There are 411 different types of hard coral that can be found in the Great Barrier Reef. Not only that, the Great Barrier Reef holds 1/3 of the world's soft coral. The coral is essential because it consumes or it takes up nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus chemicals that actually are essential to us for not being released in the atmosphere, but it is also essential to providing nutrients for the animals, marine life that resides around the Great Barrier Reef that depends on these nutrients as food sources. And food sources for us as well. We rely heavily on fish life that grows around the Great Barrier Reef, and a lot of individuals, if there's no longer fish near the Great Barrier Reef, they might have to find more alternative and expensive ways of protein, which can really cause a gap within the fishing industry and a lot of individuals' diets. So consequences with the crown of thorns starfish outbreak and long-term effects. So we see that The economy. The economy will suffer greatly in the sense that fishing industries would actually lose jobs and lose money, and or essentially fish prices can even rise to that extent. As for tourism, the Great Barrier Reef rakes in up to $6.4 billion per year, and most of the money is used to maintain the Great Barrier Reef. But if tourism decreases, there won't be enough money for all these new methods and techniques in order to save the Great Barrier Reef. It could also We can also no longer have that wall to protect us from damage to coastal communities, such as storms after flooding, as I mentioned earlier. Furthermore, as for the ecosystems itself, it decreases biodiversity. There are over 9,000 species total, whether it be um, corals, fishes, and all those other species that reside within the Great Barrier Reef. Essentially, they can become endangered because a lot of them are endemic, and they prevent flooding. We could no longer have that wall protection as I've mentioned. And that also affects the diets of individuals, right? They're gonna have to find other methods of fishing, or other fishes in other areas to fish. They're gonna have to change their diets, and essentially, if one falls, everything else falls. So here we see an image of the constant decay of the Great Barrier Reef from 2007 and 2010. As we see the less coral reefs there are, the less animals that rely on the Great Barrier Reef for food and homes will no longer thrive there and essentially die off and become extinct. So there are also solutions in which Max will explain, but as he's explaining, it's going to be a video about a new mechanism that they have introduced on how to stop Great Barrier outbreaks in the Great Barrier Reef.
Now, pretty much the main way that we control these outbreaks is through killing the starfish with lethal injections. There's been many different compounds that we've used, but right now we're using a compound of different bile salts. And those bile salts, they are very effective. They kill the crown of thornfish in only one injection. However, they are expensive, and injecting starfish can take a lot of time if you have to inject every single starfish. So lethal injections in general are not very good at controlling huge populations. We're also trying to develop new compounds that are just as effective as the bile salts, but less expensive. One of these is we're actually trying to use citric acid, and the citric acid kills just about as well as the bile salts, but we're still not sure how it will affect the surrounding reef. We're not sure if it'll have a negative effect, so there's still research going on. Another technique that is helping us is monitoring the population of the crown of thorns starfish. Now, we do that with something called the manta tow technique, which is basically when a diver is being pulled behind a boat and they just look down and they make observations about if they see large concentrations of starfish on specific parts of the reef. This helps predict outbreaks and also can help us prevent them if we send in divers at specific outbreak points to inject the starfish and kind of lower the population where there might have been a larger outbreak.
So with the ways that my partner recently mentioned, a lot of these methods are manual labor, and so they require a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of technique. But there has been new developments, such as a video that was recently playing about that actually machine that's released into the water. It's a 24-hour surveillance in the Great Barrier Reef, and it essentially detects on its own where these crown of thorns starfish are and injects them with just one injection. So this is more effective in the sense that it could, kill more crown of thorns starfish in more amounts of time than how a manual labor would require a certain periods in which the divers can actually go in when it's safe. And so new development has actually really decreased the amount of outbreaks that have occurred. But with these, we have AIMS, which is the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and SCAR, Starfish Control and Removal Program. These two are essentially institutions and laws that have implemented by Australia's protection to the Great Barrier Reef, and they both have similar guidelines in the sense that they want to stop the outbreaks of the crown of thorns starfish. They want to provide global database of outbreaks, that is, give other researchers information about how these outbreaks are occurring, where and when and why. And by doing more and more research, essentially they hope to prevent these outbreaks from occurring in time than rather stop preventing them after they already occurred. Finally, they want to educate others on understanding how to prevent these outbreaks from occurring. That may be asking individuals to try to control the agricultural runoff that is actually being washed down into the Great Barrier Reef in order to stop an increase of food that the crown of thorns starfish thrives on. Other factors may be that having groups and teams come down into the shore and actually removing these predators and moving them closer to the shore and burying them. But again, how Max earlier explained, the trident snail is one of their most common predators that doesn't cause itself harm from the crown of thorns starfish poisonous spines. But essentially, breeding the trident snail is very expensive. Not only that, but it's very hard to find these trident snails because they only breed in small amounts, and when they do breed, a lot of them die off quickly. The trident snail, as well as being a great natural predator, there's little known about where they breed most commonly, what times are they most popular at the Great Barrier Reef, and if it's capable to breed in aquariums. Sorry. Furthermore, the trident snail can only eat up to 2 to 3 crown of thorns starfish a week, so there needs to be a vast population outbreak in order for them to actually be able to manage and control these outbreaks on their own. And that's our presentation on the crown of thorns starfish and its effects upon the Great Barrier Reef. Thank you.